The massive crystal ship moved through space like a deadly spear. Its surface gleamed with blue light as it traveled between the stars. Inside the ship, Admiral Crystal stood in front of a large screen that showed the galaxy around them. Forearms moved quickly as he studied the data flowing across the display. The Admiral was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. His eyes were large and yellow, and they glowed when he was angry. Right now, those eyes were focused. On one small planet far away, the planet was blue and green, covered with water and land. The beings who lived there called it Earth, but the galaxy knew it as Terra, Admiral said, a voice behind him. Crystal turned to see his aide Valinix walking toward him. Admiral was shorter than the Admiral, with the same gray skin and yellow eyes. He carried a datapad in his hands and looked worried. What is it now? Crystal asked. His voice was deep and harsh, like grinding stone. Sir, we have received another message from the Galaxy Council. They are warning us again about the humans. Valinix held up the datapad. They say we should not attack them or start any fights with them. Crystal made a sound that was like laughing, but colder. The council is full of old fools. They are afraid of everything these days. What can these humans do to us? They are weak and stupid. The Admiral walked to another screen and pressed some buttons. The display changed too. Show pictures of human ships. The ships were small and simple, made of metal and painted white. They looked like toys compared to the great crystal ships of the Zephyrian Empire. Look at these pathetic vessels, Crystal said, pointing at the screen. They're fastest ships. Can barely travel at half-light speed. Slowest cargo ships are faster than their best warships. And their weapons. He made that cold, laughing sound again. They still use metal bullets and simple explosives. We have had plasma cannons for over 1,000 years. Valinix looked at the pictures on the screen. The human ships did look very basic. But sir, the Council seems very serious about this warning. They have sent the same message 5 times now. The Council is weak, Crystal said, his yellow eyes glowing brighter. They have forgotten what it means to be strong. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled the Outer Rim for 300 years. We have conquered 47 star systems and defeated every enemy we have faced. What makes these humans special? The Admiral walked back to the main screen and changed it to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked all the worlds controlled by the Zephyrian Empire. There were many red dots spreading across a large section of space. In the middle of that space was a small blue dot marked as New Haven. This human colony sits on one of the richest mineral deposits in the galaxy, Crystal explained. The crystals there are perfect for our ship engines. We need those minerals to expand our empire further. But these humans refused to leave. New Haven was a small world where humans had built cities and farms. They had been there for only 10 years, but they had already started mining the special crystals that grew deep in the planet's crust. The Zephyrians had ordered them to leave 3 times, but the humans had ignored every demand. Perhaps we could offer to buy the minerals from them, Valinix suggested. Crystal turned to stare at his aide. His yellow eyes were now burning with anger. Buy, we are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not buy anything from inferior species. We take what we need. Far away on the small human ship called Ranger, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and looked at the stars outside his window. His ship was not big or beautiful like the Zephyrian vessels. It was built for work, not for show. The walls were gray metal, and the floors were covered with non-slip material. Everything was designed to be useful and strong. Jake was 35 years old, with short brown hair and green eyes. He had been in the human space navy for 15 years, and he had seen many strange things among the stars. But he had never seen anything like the alien ships that now surrounded his position. Captain, said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station near the front of the bridge. Amy was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair tied back in a tight bun. She was the ship's tactical officer and one of the best Jake had ever worked with. We're getting another transmission from the Zephyrian fleet. Jake nodded, put it on the main screen. The front wall of the bridge lit up with the image of Admiral Crystal. The alien's face was cold and angry, and his yellow eyes seemed to stare right through Jake. Human vessel, Crystal said, his voice coming through the speakers with a metallic echo. You have 48 hours to evacuate all humans from the New Haven system. If you do not comply, we will destroy every human presence in this sector. The transmission ended, and the screen went back to showing the stars. Jake looked around at his crew. Besides Amy, there was engineer Ben Walsh, a big man with thick arms and a friendly face. He kept their ship running no matter what happened. At the communications station sat Lisa Ray, a smart woman with dark hair who could speak 6 different languages. Sir, Lisa said, I've been monitoring their communications. They have 32 ships in the system, all of them bigger than us. The smallest one is twice the size of Ranger. Ben looked up from his engineering station. Captain, our engines are good, but we can't outrun those crystal ships and our weapons. He shook his head. We have 4 missile launchers and 2 plasm. They have enough firepower to turn this whole planet into space dust. Jake stood up and walked to the front of the bridge. Outside the window, he could see the lights of New Haven's cities on the planet below. 10,000 humans lived down there. They had built homes and schools and hospitals. They had farms and factories and dreams for the future. Any word from Earth Command? Jake asked. Lisa checked her instruments. Negative, sir. We're too far from Earth for fast communication. It would take 3 weeks for a message to reach Earth and 3 more weeks for help to arrive. The nearest human fleet is in the Alpha Centauri system. Jake knew that the Zephyrians had chosen this moment carefully. New Haven was far from the main human territories, and there were no other human ships nearby. The aliens thought they could take the planet without any real fight. Captain, Amy said quietly, what are we going to do? Jake looked at his crew. They were good people, brave and loyal. They had signed up to protect human colonies, but they had never expected to face an entire alien fleet. Their ship was small, and their weapons were simple, but they were all that stood between the Zephyrians and the innocent people on New Haven. We're going to do our job, Jake said. We're going to protect those people down there no matter what it costs. On his flagship, Admiral Crystal watched the small human ship through his sensors. It was so tiny compared to his great crystal vessels. How could such a weak species think they could stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire? Sir Valenix said the humans are not responding to our ultimatum. Their ship is still in orbit around New Haven. Extel's mandibles clicked with pleasure. Good. When we destroy them, it will send a message to all the other human colonies. They will learn to fear the Zephyrian Empire. The Admiral did not. Know that his decision would change the galaxy forever. The Galaxy Council had warned him about humanity, but he had not listened. Soon, he would learn why those warnings had been given. The attack began at sunrise on New Haven. The sky turned bright orange as the Zephyrian ships opened fire from orbit. Their plasma cannons sent streams of burning energy down toward the planet's surface. The first target was the main mining facility, where humans had been working to extract the valuable crystals. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of his ship as the alien weapons lit up the morning sky. The explosions on the planet below looked like falling stars, but he knew each one meant human lives were in danger. All stations battle alert, Jake ordered. Amy, target the nearest Zephyrian ship. Ben, give me everything the engines have. Got Lisa, send a distress signal to Earth Command. The Ranger moved away from the planet and toward the enemy fleet. It was a small ship facing giants, but Jake's crew worked with perfect coordination. They had trained for this moment even though they had never expected to face such overwhelming odds. On the planet's surface, the humans were not giving up without a fight. Colony Administrator Helen Price ran through the underground tunnels that connected the mining stations. She was 50 years old, with gray hair and tough hands from years of hard work. Behind her followed 20 other colonists, all carrying emergency supplies. The evacuation shuttles are loading at Landing Pad 7. Helen shouted over the sound of explosions above them. We need to get the children out first. Her husband Carl was leading a different group of miners. Carl was a big man with thick arms and a beard that was now covered in dust from the collapsing tunnels. He had worked in dangerous mines all his life, but he had never faced anything like this. They're targeting our power stations, Carl said into his radio. If we lose main power, the defensive shields will fail. Above them, the Zephyrian ships continued their bombardment. Admiral Crystal watched the destruction from his flagship and felt satisfied. The human colony was falling apart just as he had predicted. Sir Velenix reported the human orbital defense platforms had been destroyed. Their ground-based weapons are no threat to our ships? Crystal nodded. Good. Now we can land our troops and take control of the mining facilities. The humans will surrender once they see our ground forces. But the Admiral was wrong about how humans would react. As the first Zephyrian landing ships approached the planet, they found something they did not expect. The humans were not running away in panic. Instead, they were fighting back with everything they had. The mining equipment that the humans used to dig crystals from the ground was big and powerful. Carl and his team had turned their mining lasers into weapons. The heavy machinery that moved tons of rock every day was now being used to attack the alien landing ships. Remember, Carl told his volunteers, these machines were built to cut through solid rock. Alien armor should not be much harder. The first Zephyrian soldiers to land on New Haven were met by humans driving huge mining vehicles. The aliens had expected to face primitive weapons, but instead they found themselves fighting against industrial machinery operated by people who knew how to use it in space. Captain Morrison was learning that the Zephyrians had made their own mistakes. Their ships were big and powerful, but they were also slow to turn and difficult to maneuver. The Ranger was much smaller, but it could move quickly and change direction in ways that confused the enemy. Ben, can you push the engines any harder? Jake asked as his ship dodged between two massive crystal vessels. I'm giving you 110%, Captain, Ben replied from his engineering station. Any more, and we'll blow the reactor. Amy, do we have any targets? Lieutenant Carter studied her tactical display. Sir, their ships have thick armor, but I'm seeing weak points near their weapon systems. If we can get close enough, we might be able to damage their plasma cannons. Jake made a decision that would have seemed crazy to any military academy. Instead of running away from the enemy fleet, he ordered his ship to fly directly toward the largest Zephyrian vessel. All hands. Prepare for close combat, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to show these aliens what humans can do. The Ranger accelerated toward Admiral Crystal's flagship. The alien ship was 10 times larger than the human vessel, but Jake had noticed something important. The Zephyrians kept their ships in neat formations, like they were on parade. They were not expecting an enemy to behave unpredictably. They're coming straight at us, Velenix reported with disbelief. The human ship is not trying to escape. It's attacking our flagship directly. Crystal was puzzled. Are they trying to commit suicide? No rational species would attempt such a hopeless attack. But Jake Morrison was not being suicidal. He was being human. As the Ranger flew past the massive crystal ship, Amy fired every weapon they had at the alien vessel's weapon systems. The small human missiles could not destroy the huge ship, but they could damage its guns and sensors. The attack worked better than Jake had hoped. The Zephyrian flagship's main plasma cannon exploded in a shower of crystal fragments. The alien ship was not destroyed, but it was badly damaged. Direct hit on their primary weapon, Amy reported. They're losing power too. Their forward shields. More importantly, the attack had confused the entire Zephyrian fleet. They had never seen such tactics before. Their ships were designed to fight in organized formations against other organized formations. The humans were fighting like wild animals, with no plan except to cause as much damage as possible on the planet below. The human colonists were proving just as unpredictable. When the Zephyrian ground troops tried to capture the main mining facility, they found that the humans had booby-trapped the entire complex. Explosions rocked the alien forces as they tried to advance through the tunnels. Helen Price coordinated the resistance from a bunker, deep underground. She had never been a soldier, but she had spent years managing the colony's operations. Now she was managing a war. Team 3. The aliens are trying to circle around the east mining shaft. She spoke into her radio. Can you block their path? Already? On it, came Carl's voice. We're bringing down the tunnel supports. They'll have to find another way. The Zephyrians were discovering that humans fought differently than any species they had encountered before. When their position was hopeless, instead of surrendering, humans would destroy their own equipment to prevent the aliens from using When faced with superior firepower, the humans would disappear into tunnels and attack from unexpected directions. Most confusing of all, the humans seemed to care more about protecting each other than about protecting themselves. Zephyrian soldiers watched in amazement as human civilians risked their lives to help wounded strangers. Parents fought with desperate courage to defend their children. Workers sacrificed themselves to give their friends time to escape. In space, Captain Morrison's ship was running out of ammunition and fuel. The Ranger had damaged 3 Zephyrian vessels, but there were still 29 enemy ships in the system. The human ship was alone against impossible odds. "Captain," Lisa reported, "I'm getting reports from the surface. The evacuation shuttles are launching, but the Zephyrians are trying to shoot them down." Jake looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were moving to intercept the defenseless. Transport ships that carried New Haven's children and elderly people. The Ranger was the only thing that could protect them. "Ben, give me ramming speed," Jake ordered. His crew stared at him. "Sir?" Amy asked. "You heard me? We're going to ram that crystal ship before it can attack our people." Ben's hands moved over. His controls, engines at maximum. Hull integrity at 60%. "We might not survive the impact." "Then we make it count," Jake said. "Lisa, transmit our ship's log to Earth Command. Make sure they know what happened here." The Ranger accelerated toward the nearest Zephyrian ship. It was a desperate move, but it was also a human move. The alien captain tried to turn his vessel away, but the crystal ship was too slow and too big. The small human ship struck the alien vessel near its engine section. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. Both ships were destroyed, but the sacrifice had worked. The evacuation shuttles escaped safely, carrying most of New Haven's population away from the battle zone. Admiral Crixtal watched the destruction of both ships and felt something he had never experienced before. It was not fear exactly, but it was close. These humans were not fighting like any rational species should fight. They were willing to die to protect people they barely knew. Sir Valenik said quietly, "Perhaps we should reconsider our attack. The humans are proving more difficult than we expected." Crixtal's yellow eyes glowed with anger. "No, we will take this planet and crush this rebellion. But first, we need to understand what we are fighting." The Admiral was beginning to realize that the Galaxy Council's warnings might have been more serious than he had thought. The humans were not just another weak species to be conquered. They were something different, something dangerous. The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The news reached Earth 3 weeks after the battle at New Haven. The message came through the deep space communication network, carried by automated relay stations scattered across the galaxy. When the signal finally arrived at Earth Command, it brought the worst news humanity had received since they first reached the stars. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the main command center of Earth's military headquarters. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp blue eyes. For 20 years, she had been preparing humanity's defenses against unknown threats from space. Now that threat had a name and a face. "How many casualties?" she asked the intelligence. An officer who had brought her the report. 3,000 confirmed dead or missing at New Haven, the officer replied. "The Zephyrians destroyed most of the colony's infrastructure. The survivors are scattered across refugee camps on nearby worlds." Kate looked at the holographic display that showed the galaxy around. Earth. Red markers indicated Zephyrian-controlled systems, while blue markers showed human colonies. The red was spreading, and several blue markers had already gone dark. What about Captain Morrison and his crew? The Ranger was destroyed in the battle. All hands lost. But their sacrifice allowed the evacuation shuttles to escape. They saved over 7,000 civilians. Kate closed her eyes for a moment. Jake Morrison had been a good officer and a good man. His crew had given their lives to protect people they didn't even know. It was exactly the kind of courage that made her proud to be human, but it also made her angry that such courage had been necessary. "Summon the Colonial Council," she ordered. "Emergency session. We need to discuss our response to this attack." Human Colonial Council met in a large chamber beneath the surface of Earth. Representatives from every human world had gathered either in person or through holographic projection. The mood in the room was grim as Admiral Sullivan presented the details of the Zephyrian attack. President Richard Hayes sat at the head of the council table. He was an older man with kind eyes and graying hair, but today his face was hard with anger. "Admiral Sullivan," he said, "what are our military options?" "Limited, sir," Kate replied honestly. "The Zephyrians have a technological advantage in superior numbers. However, our intelligence suggests they have weaknesses we can exploit." She activated a holographic display that showed a Zephyrian crystal ship. Their vessels are powerful but slow. They rely on centralized command structures and predictable tactics. If we can disrupt their communications and use hit-and-run attacks, we might be able to level the playing field. Councilwoman Margaret Stone from the Mars colony leaned forward. "What about diplomacy? Has the Galaxy Council offered to mediate?" "The Galaxy Council has expressed concerns about human military capabilities," Kate answered. "They seem more worried about us than about the Zephyrians. Several council members have suggested that humanity should accept Zephyrian rule to avoid a larger conflict." The room erupted in angry voices. Representatives from different worlds all spoke at once, their voices mixing together in a chorus of outrage. President Hayes called for order, but it took several minutes for the room to quiet down. "With respect to the Galaxy Council," said Councilman Frank Davis from the Jupiter mining stations, "they weren't the ones being attacked. Our people died at New Haven. Our children were targeted by alien weapons. We have a right to defend ourselves." 8. Nodded, sir. "I recommend we begin immediate military mobilization. We need to show the Zephyrians that humanity will not be conquered without a fight." While the politicians debated, the human military was already preparing for war. Captain Danny Brooks stood on the bridge of the battleship Liberty watching. As supply ships loaded ammunition and fuel, the Liberty was one of humanity's newest and most powerful warships. But even it looked small compared to the Zephyrian vessels they would face. Danny was 42 years old, with black hair and brown eyes. He had served in the human navy for 20 years, rising through the ranks during the peaceful expansion period, when humanity's biggest enemies were space pirates and equipment failures. Now he was preparing to lead the largest human fleet ever, assembled into battle against an alien empire. "Status report," he called to his crew. Lieutenant Grace Kim looked up from her tactical station. Grace was brilliant with computers and strategic analysis, but she had never seen real combat. None of them had, except for the survivors from New Haven. "Sir, we have confirmation that 63 ships will be ready for deployment within the UA. Week," Grace reported. "It includes 12 battleships, 24 cruisers, and 27 destroyers. We also have support vessels for supplies and medical care." Danny studied the numbers. 63 ships sounded like a lot, but intelligence reports suggested the Zephyrians had over 300 vessels in their fleet. The math was not encouraging. "What about our new weapons?" he asked. "The plasma torpedoes are ready for testing," Grace replied. "Engineering says they should be more effective against crystalline armor than our standard missiles. We also have the new electronic warfare packages that might disrupt their communications." Danny walked to the main view screen and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire was preparing for humanity's response. They probably expected the humans to surrender or to make a weak counterattack that could be easily defeated. They were wrong. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Crystal was reviewing reports from his intelligence officers. The humans were mobilizing their fleet just as he had expected, but the numbers were disappointing. "Only 63 ships?" he asked Valenex. "That's all they can gather?" "Yes, sir. Our agents report that this represents nearly half of their total military fleet. The humans appear to be committing everything they have to this assault." Crystal made his cold, laughing sound. "Foolish. They should have negotiated while they still had the chance. Now they will face the full power of the Zephyrian Empire." The Admiral walked to his command station and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Across space, the captains of 300 crystal ships listened to his words. "Warriors of the Empire," Crystal began, "the humans have chosen to fight rather than submit. They are bringing their pathetic fleet to challenge our might. We will crush them completely and show the galaxy what happens to species that defy us." But even as he spoke, Crystal remembered the strange behavior of the humans at New Haven. They had fought with desperate courage, using tactics that made no sense to trained military minds. They had sacrificed their own ship to protect civilians. They didn't even know. It was irrational behavior, but it had also been surprisingly effective, Sir Valenek said quietly. "Should we request additional ships from the home fleet?" Crystal turned to stare at his aide. "Are you suggesting that we cannot defeat these primitives with our current forces?" "No, sir. But the humans fought differently than we expected at New Haven. Perhaps we should be prepared for more surprises." The Admiral considered this. The Galaxy Council had warned him about humanity, but their warnings had been vague and confusing. They had talked about human unpredictability and their capacity for violence, but they had not explained what that meant in practical terms. "Very well," Crystal decided. "Signal the home fleet. Request 50 additional ships. Right. We will meet the human attack with overwhelming force." Back on Earth, the final preparations were being made. Admiral Sullivan stood in the main briefing room, addressing the captains who would lead humanity's counterattack. The room was filled with men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting human colonies. But few of them had ever expected to face a war of this magnitude. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Sullivan began, "we are about to embark on the most important mission in human history. The Zephyrian Empire believes they can conquer our worlds and enslave our people. They are wrong. Display that showed the planned attack routes. We will not fight them on their terms. We will not line up our ships in neat formations and trade shots until one side is destroyed. We will fight like humans." Captain Brooks raised his hand. "Admiral, what does that mean exactly?" Kate smiled grimly. "It means we will be unpredictable. We will be creative. We will use every advantage we have, no matter how small. The Zephyrians expect us to fight like civilized beings following the rules of war. Instead, we will fight like humans protecting our families." The briefing continued for 2 hours as the Admiral explained the strategy. The human fleet would divide into small groups and attack multiple targets simultaneously. They would use hit-and-run tactics, electronic warfare, and psychological operations to confuse and demoralize the enemy. "Remember," Admiral Sullivan concluded, "we are not just fighting for territory or resources. We are fighting for the right of humanity to exist as a free species. The Zephyrians started this war, but we will finish it." The meeting ended. The captains prepared to return to their ships. The human fleet would launch in 48 hours, beginning a journey that would take them deep into Zephyrian space. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But they had something the aliens did not understand. They had the determination of a species that refused to surrender, and the creativity of minds that had never learned to accept defeat. The human attack began not with a single massive fleet, but with dozens of small strikes across Zephyrian space. Captain Danny Brooks led the main battle group toward the alien stronghold at Kepler Station, while other human forces attacked supply, convoys, communication relays, and isolated outposts throughout the Empire. The Zephyrians had expected a traditional battle. They had positioned their main fleet in defensive formations around their most important worlds, waiting for the humans to attack predictably. Instead, they found their enemies everywhere at once, striking like lightning and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Lieutenant Commander Troy Sanders flew his fighter squadron toward a Zephyrian fuel depot in the Sigma system. Troy was 28 years old, with red hair and green eyes that sparkled with excitement. He had always been the best pilot in his class, but he had never imagined using his skills in a real war. "Eagle Squadron, this is Eagle Leader Troy," spoke into his radio. "Remember the plan. You go in fast, hit the fuel tanks, and get out before their fighters can respond." Behind him flew 11 other pilots, including Nicole Webb and Scott Parker. Nicole was small and quick with blonde hair, tied back under her helmet. She had joined the military to see the galaxy, not to fight aliens, but she was determined to do her duty. Scott was older and more experienced, with calm hands and steady nerves that made him perfect for dangerous missions. "Eagle Leader, this is Eagle 3?" Nicole's voice came through the radio. I'm reading 24 Zephyrian fighters on patrol around the depot. Copy that, Eagle 3. Eagle Squadron, remember what they taught us in training. Zephyrian fighters are bigger and more powerful than ours, but they're also slower and less maneuverable. Use your speed and stay unpredictable. The human fighters dove toward the fuel depot like hunting birds. The Zephyrian patrol ships tried to intercept them, but the humans scattered in all directions, making it impossible for the aliens to coordinate their defense. Troy's fighter screamed past a massive crystal ship, its weapons blazing, his plasma. Cannons punched holes in the alien vessel's armor, but more importantly, they confused the enemy. The Zephyrians had never seen pilots who flew so recklessly, taking risks that seemed suicidal. Eagle 4, you've got 2 bogeys on your tail, Scott called out. I see them, came the reply. Watch this. The human pilot suddenly cut his engines and let his fighter drift backward while still firing forward. The Zephyrian ships, moving too fast to react, flew right into his line of fire. Both alien fighters exploded in balls of crystal fragments. Nice move, Eagle 4, Troy said. Now, let's finish this job. The human squadron reached the fuel depot and released their torpedoes. Massive storage tanks exploded one after another, sending flames shooting across space. The depot that had supplied fuel to dozens of Zephyrian ships was now a burning wreck. Eagle Squadron, mission accomplished, Troy reported. All birds heading home, but the fuel depot was just one target among many. Across Zephorian space, human forces were striking everywhere the aliens felt safe. Supply convoys disappeared without warning. Communication stations went silent. Patrol ships failed to report back to their commanders. On the planet Zarian Major, Chris Taylor led a team of human special forces soldiers through the underground tunnels beneath the main Zephyrian base. Chris was a quiet man with dark hair and serious eyes. He'd spent years learning how to fight in dangerous places, but this was his first mission behind enemy lines. Remember, he whispered to his team, "We're not here to win a battle. We're here to make them afraid." Every Zephyrian soldier who has to look over his shoulder is one less soldier they can use against our main fleet. His team included Sergeant Katie Lopez, a tough woman who could speak several alien languages, and Corporal Ryan Bell, a young man who was an expert with explosives. They had been dropped on Zarian 3 days earlier, and had spent the time studying Zephyrian patrol patterns and security procedures. Major Katie whispered, "I count 12 guards in the main communications center. They look nervous." Chris smiled grimly. That was exactly what he wanted to hear. Good. Nervous guards make mistakes. Ryan, are the charges ready? Yes, sir. When these go off, they'll knock out communications for this entire sector. The human soldiers moved through the base like ghosts. They had studied Zephyrian technology and knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. More importantly, they understood something that the aliens did not. Fear was a weapon that could be more powerful than any gun or bomb. When the explosions started, the Zephyrian garrison thought they were under attack by a full human army. In reality, there were only 6 human soldiers on the entire planet. They moved so quickly and struck so many targets that the aliens could not tell how many enemies they faced. Base command to all units came panicked voices over the Zephyrian radio frequencies. "We are under attack by unknown forces. Repeat, the base is under attack." Major Taylor and his team slipped away into the night, leaving behind a garrison of confused and frightened alien soldiers. They had not killed many enemies, but they had achieved something more valuable. They had made the Zephyrians afraid of shadows. The psychological warfare was working better than Admiral Sullivan had hoped. On his flagship, Admiral Crystal stared at the tactical display that showed attacks across his empire. Red warning lights blinked everywhere, indicating systems under attack or communications failures. "How many human ships are we facing?" Crystal demanded. We don't know, Sir, Valenix replied nervously. "Our intelligence estimates suggest they have only 63 ships, but we're receiving attack reports from over 40 different systems." Crystal's yellow eyes blazed with anger and confusion. "That's impossible. No fleet can be in 40 places at once. Sir, perhaps they have more ships than we thought. Or perhaps they are using some kind of advanced technology that allows them to move faster than our sensors can track. The Admiral studied the reports more carefully. The attacks were small but devastating. Humans were not trying to conquer territory. They were trying to disrupt the Empire's ability to function. They were cutting supply lines, destroying communication networks, and spreading fear among Zephyrian forces. "It's like fighting smoke," Crystal muttered. "Every time we move to counter one attack, they strike somewhere else." Meanwhile, Captain Brooks and the main human battle fleet were approaching their primary target. Kepler Station was the Zephyrians' most important military base in the Outer Rim. It was heavily defended by over 100 crystal ships and protected by powerful energy shields. Captain, Lieutenant Grace Kim, reported from her tactical station. Long-range sensors showed the Zephyrian fleet in defensive formation around the station. "They're waiting for us." Danny looked at the enemy formation on his display. The Zephyrian ships were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, their weapons all pointed outward to create overlapping fields of fire. It was exactly the kind of defense that would stop a conventional attack. But the humans were not planning a conventional attack. Grace signaled the fleet, "Execute Plan Chaos." The human ships suddenly scattered in all directions. Instead of approaching the station as a single formation, they broke into small groups that attacked from dozens of different angles. Some ships flew directly at the station's shields, while others circled around to attack from behind. A few ships even flew underneath the defensive formation, where the Zephyrians had not expected an attack. The aliens tried to rotate their formation to meet the new threats, but they could not turn fast enough. Their perfect defensive pattern became a liability as ships crashed into each other, trying to change position. "All ships target their command vessels," Danny ordered. "Take out their coordination, and they'll fall apart." The human plasma torpedoes slammed into the Zephyrian command ships. These weapons had been specifically designed to disrupt the crystal technology that the aliens used for communication. When the torpedoes exploded, they sent electromagnetic pulses through the enemy fleet that scrambled their ability to coordinate suddenly. The perfectly organized Zephyrian formation became a confused mass of individual ships. Without central coordination, each captain had to make his own decisions about where to go and what to attack. Some ships fired on targets that were already destroyed. Others collided with their own allies in the confusion. "Grace, are you seeing this?" Danny asked in amazement. "Yes, sir. Their formation is completely falling apart. It's like watching a dance where half the dancers forgot the steps." The battle for Kepler Station lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian base was in human hands and 23 alien ships had been destroyed or captured. The human fleet had lost only 4 ships. A victory ratio that should have been impossible, but the real victory was not the capture of one base. The real victory was the message it sent to the entire galaxy. Humans were not just defending themselves anymore. They were taking the fight to their enemies. They were winning. Admiral Krikstal received the news while his flagship was racing toward another human attack. His perfect empire was crumbling, and he finally understood why the Galaxy Council had warned him about humanity. These beings did not fight like civilized species. The final battle would take place in the Zephyrian home system, where Admiral Krikstal had gathered the last intact portion of his empire's fleet. 300 massive crystal ships formed defensive rings around the alien homeworld, their weapons pointed toward the darkness of space where they knew the human fleet would appear. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UHS Defiance, watching the enemy formation through long-range sensors. She had pushed her fleet hard to reach this moment, fighting through 12 star systems to get here. Now 61 human ships faced the entire remaining strength of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral reported her communications officer were receiving a transmission from the Galaxy Council. "They're ordering us to withdraw and accept mediation." Kate looked at the message on her screen. Council was afraid that this battle would spiral into a larger galactic war. They wanted humanity to stop fighting and negotiate a peace settlement with the Zephyrians. "Send a reply," Kate ordered. "Tell the Council that we tried peace. The Zephyrians responded by murdering our civilians. We'll make our own peace now." Captain Danny Brooks watched the alien fleet from the bridge of the Liberty. His ship had survived 4 major battles to reach this point, and his crew had become veterans of this strange new kind of warfare. Lieutenant Grace Kim worked at her tactical station, analyzing the enemy formation and looking for weaknesses. Captain Grace said quietly, "Their defensive pattern is almost perfect. They've learned from our previous attacks to no gaps, overlapping fields of fire, and multiple layers of protection around their homeworld." Danny nodded. The Zephyrians had finally adapted to human tactics. They were no longer arranging their ships in pretty formations that could be easily disrupted. This would be a real fight. Grace, send a signal to all ship captains. Tell them this is it. Today we finish what they started at New Haven. Admiral Crixtal stood in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing his fleet's status. He had learned hard lessons from the human attacks. His ships were now arranged in a defensive formation that could respond to attacks from any direction. He had tripled his communication redundancy to prevent the electromagnetic weapons that had caused so much confusion in earlier battles. Sir Valenex reported, "Our scouts confirm that the entire human fleet is approaching. 61 ships, just as our intelligence predicted." Crixtal felt a moment of satisfaction. Finally, he would face his enemies in a proper battle. No more hit-and-run attacks. No more confusion and chaos. This would be a test of pure military strength, and he had 300 ships against their 61. "Signal all commanders," Crixtal ordered. "Today we crush the human rebellion and restore order to the galaxy." The battle began when the human fleet split into 3 groups. Admiral Sullivan led one group in a direct assault on the center of the Zephyrian formation. Captain Brooks took his ships around the left side of the enemy fleet, while Commander Lisa Hart led the third group around the right side. Commander Hart was the captain of the destroyer Vengeance, one of the fastest ships in the human fleet. She was 35 years old, with short brown hair and steady hands that never shook, even in the worst battles. Her crew included Executive Officer Mike Chen, a quiet man who had trained for space warfare his whole life, and Weapons Officer Janet Stone, a woman who could hit any target with deadly accuracy. Commander Mike reported, "The Zephyrian ships are adjusting to meet our 3-pronged attack. They're maintaining formation cohesion." Lisa studied her tactical display. The alien ships were moving smoothly to counter the human maneuvers. Had learned from their previous defeats. This would not be an easy victory. Janet, target their command ships. If we can disrupt their coordination, we might still be able to break their formation. The space around the Zephyrian homeworld erupted in weapons fire. Plasma beams and missile trails crisscrossed the darkness as the 2 fleets engaged in the largest space battle in galactic history. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians gleamed like deadly jewels as they fired their weapons, while the human ships darted between them like angry wasps. But the Zephyrians had prepared well for this fight. Their improved formation held together under the human assault. For every alien ship destroyed, the humans lost one of their own. The battle was turning into a war of attrition that humanity could not win. Admiral Sullivan watched her fleet take casualties and knew she had to do something desperate. The conventional attack was not working. The Zephyrians had finally learned to fight like humans with flexibility and coordination. She needed to find a way to fight like something else entirely. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," she announced. "Over the fleet communication system, new orders. We're going to do something no sane military commander would attempt. We're going to ram their homeworld's defensive platforms." The human fleet suddenly changed its attack pattern. Instead of trying to destroy the Zephyrian ships, they began targeting the massive defensive platforms that protected the alien homeworld. These platforms were heavily armored and protected by energy shields, but they could not move. Captain Brooks understood immediately what the Admiral was planning. "Grace, plot a ramming course for Platform 7. Maximum speed." "Sir, that's suicide. The platform's shields will destroy us before we can make contact. Not if we overload our own shields. First, when our shields collapse, they'll create an electromagnetic pulse that should disrupt their defenses for a few seconds. That might be enough time to get through." The Liberty accelerated toward the massive defensive platform. Behind it, other human ships were making similar attacks on different targets. It was a desperate strategy that violated every principle of space warfare. It was also completely unexpected. Commander Hart made the same decision aboard the Vengeance. Her ship was smaller and faster than the Liberty, which meant she could reach her target first. She also knew that her ship probably would not survive the impact. "Mike, Janet," she said to her crew, "it's been an honor serving with you. Make sure the recordings of this battle reach Earth. Let them know how we fought." The Vengeance struck Platform 3 at maximum speed. The ship's shields overloaded exactly as Captain Brooks had predicted, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse. For 3 seconds, the platform's defenses were disrupted. In those 3 seconds, human ship's hull slammed into the alien structure. The explosion could be seen from the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld. Platform 3, which had protected the planet for over 200 years, was completely destroyed. The Vengeance was gone too, but its sacrifice had opened a gap in the planet's defenses. Other human ships followed the same strategy. The Liberty destroyed Platform 7. The cruiser Independence took out Platform 5. Ship after ship made suicide runs against the alien defenses, trading their lives for strategic advantage. Admiral Crixtal watched in horror as his planet's defenses crumbled. The humans were destroying themselves to hurt him, and it was working. He had never seen anything like it in 3 centuries of military service, Sir Velenik said with fear in his voice. "They're not trying to win a battle. They're trying to make sure we lose the war." With the defensive platforms destroyed, human fighters began attacking targets on the planet's surface. They were not trying to conquer the Zephyrian homeworld. Were demonstrating that they could destroy it if they chose to. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian fleet was broken and their homeworld was defenseless. Admiral Sullivan had only 23 ships left, but she had achieved complete victory. Admiral Crixtal stood among the ruins of his command center and finally understood the Galaxy Council's warnings. The humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something unique in the galaxy, a people who would sacrifice everything to protect their freedom and their families. "Signal the human fleet," Crixtal told his aide. "Unconditional surrender." 3 months later, representatives from Earth met with the Galaxy Council to discuss the end of the war. President Hayes and Admiral Sullivan sat at a table surrounded by alien diplomats who looked at them with a mixture of respect and fear. "The Zephyrian Empire has surrendered completely," announced the council speaker. "Their aggressive expansion has ended, and they have agreed to release all conquered territories. However, the council must address the methods used by humanity in this conflict." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. "We fought to defend our people and our freedom. We used every weapon and every tactic available to us. Any species that threatens human civilians will face the same response." The speaker nodded slowly. "It's the galaxy. Council formally recognizes humanity as a major power in this galaxy. We hope that future relations will be conducted through diplomacy rather than warfare." As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, they knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer a minor species on the edge of galactic civilization. They had proven that they could fight and win against overwhelming odds. The other alien civilizations now understood why the Galaxy Council had warned the Zephyrians about humanity. These humans were dangerous, not because they were cruel or evil, but because they were capable of anything when protecting their own people.